Alright guys, today we're going to simplify square roots, we're going to do reals and imaginaries. We're going to simplify them completely. We're also going to learn how to write an imaginary number and to simplify. Yeah, there we go. Imaginary radical expressions. Okay, so this is called a radical sign, number on the radical, and that's what you get when you take the square root. So, when we say radical 16, that's what we mean right there. Let's talk about square roots. So we know that 1 squared is 1. You don't have to write this down. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared 16. Y'all know these, right? So that means the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 16 is 4. And why is this? That's because it is a square root. We don't write the 2 here. We assume that you know. That's math people assume you know this is a square root. But if we take a look at 16 here, that would be 4 times 4, correct? So for every 2 terms, 1 would come out. That's why the square root of 16 is 4. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this down here below. So let me scooch on down. Simplify the following radicals. So we know this is a square root, so for every 2, 1 gets to come out. So if I break up 24, this is 6 times 4, and this is 3 times 2, and that's 2 times 2. Now remember, if I go too fast, feel free to back it up or pause me. This is your learning. Go at your pace. So we are dealing with a square root, so for every 2, square means 2, for every 2, 1 comes out. So this will come out. So for every 2, 1 comes out. For every 2, 1 comes out. Alright? These guys don't have a pair, so 3 times 2 is 6. So 2 root 6 is the simplified answer. Let's look at 85. So 5 does go in there. Let's see. 5, 6, 7, 8. This will go in there 1 time. And let's see. Let's use a calculator. So don't be afraid to use it. And by the way, some students like to just type in square root 24 into the calculator. Be really careful with that because I absolutely do not want to have a decimal. Okay, we're just simplifying them. There we go. So 5 times 17. Well, 17 doesn't break up any further. So we're stuck with this. Do we have any pairs? No, we don't. So this is it. There's nothing to simplify. So write square root 85 is your answer. There's nothing to simplify. On this one here, it's 6 and 6. Now, some of you can stop here and tell me what the square root of 36 is. Most of you know it's 6. But if we keep with what we've been doing, and you totally can do that, by the way, but if we keep with what we've been doing, notice you have a pair of 3s, and you have a pair of 2s. Nothing is left inside. If nothing is left inside, then there is no more square root. So straight up 6. Okay, so there's 3 different types. Here's one where it actually simplifies, here's one where it doesn't simplify at all, and here's one where it simplifies so much that there's no more square root. We talked a lot last chapter about real versus imaginary solutions on a graph, and now we're going to talk about them in an equation. You can end up with an imaginary solution if you get a negative number under a radical. So let's make sure we know how to simplify a radical if it has an imaginary solution. So I is actually the square root of negative 1. In the past, I know when I've taught, I've told students, like if you have the square root of a negative, you can't do it. It's a not real answer. Okay, so that's because we wait until Algebra 2 to teach you imaginaries, and they're not completely imaginary. They do have uses. I know the title suggests that we're talking about unicorns and such, but we're not. So I is the square root of negative 1. So basically, if you see, yes, write this down. If you see a negative under a radical, it's I. Okay, so if you see a negative under radical, it's I. You get square root negative 16, that's 4i. You get square root negative 25, that's 5i. If you get square root negative 100, that's 10i. Okay, so it's the same stuff you've been doing, except now when you see a negative, excuse me, I have a cold. Now when you see a negative, you're going to write I. So let's talk about this one. So we can break this up like we've been doing, right? We can totally do that if you would like. Some of you just know the square root of 64 is 8. Okay, but let's pretend you don't. Let's pretend you don't. So if I break this up, I do tend to bring down my negative with it. Okay, and then we're going to break up 8. So negative 4 and 2, 4 and 2, bringing down my negative. Okay, so if we look at this, right here, we do have a negative, so anytime you see a negative, you're going to write I. We have a pair of 2s, we have a pair of 2s, we have a pair of 2s, and we have nothing left inside, right? nothing left inside. So 2 times 2 times 2, this is 8i as your answer. Let's look over here at negative 12. So breaking this up the same, so negative 6 times 2, negative 3 times 2, bring down the 2. Again, when you see a negative, you write I. Pair of 2's, you bring out the 2, and the 3 stays inside, just like that. Now 7 doesn't break up, right? But we do have a negative sign in here, so this is I root 7. So don't do nothing with it, there is an I there. Alright, so this concludes the entire lesson, and I know you had a lot of fun. So until next time, bye!